Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazzo.
Hello, friends, family in Christ. God bless you and thank you for your prayers and for sharing the show. John Haller is my guest today. Before we get to him, I want to mention pre-orders for my brand new book are on Amazon for the ebook. That is the ebook. If you are an ebook Kindle reader, you can go to Assault on the Image of God at Amazon.com. Understanding and responding to attacks on the Bible, human life, and the church. So you can pre-order the ebook. The paperback will be available in a matter of weeks. December 1st. That's going to be here before we know it. All right, John Haller is my guest. I want to read something, and this is where we're going in a minute. I'm quoting an article. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth created life. Life created machine, and machine became God. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence today and how it's crept in everywhere and how it'll be used in more ways than we even realize right now, with John Haller, Fellowship Bible Chapel in Ohio, also a YouTube channel. He's got a great prophecy update every Sunday, sometimes Wednesdays, a lot of Wednesdays recently, right, John? How you doing, brother?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of interviews, so I've sort of gotten away from the midweek ones right now just because of the time factor.
Yep, and what's going on in the world?
I try to get something out every week, a couple times a week. All
right, so before we get into AI, a lot of people follow you, and there's some people in our audience that don't. So what is the one, I know there's a lot of big stories coming out of Israel and the Middle East regarding Hamas and the war and everything. What is one thing that maybe has flown under the radar or that you are concerned about?
Well, I think I have to break it down to two things. Okay. One is the narrative that I see out there. I am seeing just absolutely horrible anti-Semitism and Jew hatred from a lot of quarters. And a lot of that's coming from people on the far left and what I guess I would term the far right. There seems to be a unity there that they just hate Israel and hate Jews. And related to that, and I think we mentioned this as we were talking before, I'm really concerned with how this plays out with regard to the younger generation. I'm seeing polling that's indicating that Hamas, which went in the most brutal thing we've seen in our lifetimes on this attack on October 7th, went in and just brutalized people, raped people, beheaded people, put babies in ovens, and just slaughtered people, and then took videos of it, and it's almost impossible to describe. I would encourage people to go look at some of the videos that are available out there, because I think you need to understand what it was that they did.
Yes.
But the support among the younger generations, I'm talking like 25 and under or 30 and under, I'm seeing polling that indicates that Hamas has support, not sort of like, well, we think they're okay, or, they're as bad as Israel. They have support of about 70, 80% of people in that age category. So there's a massive generational divide on this. And I don't know if it's because older people have, like, for example, I grew up as the child of parents who lived through World War II, a father who fought and was injured in World War II. So we have a little different perspective on World War II, but I'm just telling you, it's shocking to me, but then it's even more troubling to see that within people who claim to be Christians.
Yeah.
That they are falling for this. And so I've said my encouragement has been, and as someone who supports Israel, understands I think Israel plays a role in the end times. That doesn't mean I support everything that they do. That's a ridiculous notion.
Right.
But I think we have to strike a balance where, if you support Israel, you can make Israel an idol, and you sort of lose your ability to analyze things. You're kind of blinded by that. But then on the other hand, you shouldn't try to make clever theological arguments to support your Jew hatred. because that you should be able to see right through that. But I'm very, very troubled by that. So that's one thing, is the narrative, and just the propaganda and things that I'm seeing in fake videos and fake narratives and everything on Twitter and YouTube. I don't subscribe to TikTok because, for reasons that we'll talk about in just a moment. But then the other thing too is the concern I have is, where's this war going to go? Is it going to expand into other fronts? And so there's legitimate concerns that the war will expand to the north of Israel. There's been a lot of rhetoric coming out of countries like Turkey, particularly about we're coming to get you. Erdogan, the president of Turkey, gave a speech the day after October 7th to about 1.5 million people in Istanbul to support the Palestinians. Now, mind you, this is a day later. The leader of Turkey is doing this, and he was supposed to be coming to Israel for meetings. They were going to have diplomatic meetings. Those are off, of course. But he said in that thing, though, he kind of gave away the ultimate thing that I think where this is going is that the cross will fall to the Islamic crescent. He said that in his speech.
Wow.
So we got to watch that. So there's concern that Israel will get into it with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Israel's come out and said, listen, if we go into Lebanon, it's going to look like Gaza all the way from northern Israel to Beirut. And they're ready for it. They've been talking about this for years. And there's some thinking in the people who analyze the Arab culture and everything that the Arab culture respects the strong horse. So Israel really needs to make a statement by what they do. But the problem is the narrative in the rest of the world that they're losing. And then there's also concerns that not only in the front in the north, but a front may open with Jordan, and a front may open with the Palestinian Arabs that live in the area of the West Bank, biblical Judea and Samaria. And there's been over 100 Arabs killed since October 7th in crackdowns on terrorism in that area. And I think I saw a story this morning. It's kind of hard to remember because these things fly through your Twitter and email pretty quickly these days. But that Israel thwarted a terror attack in Jerusalem, or that was going to be done in Jerusalem. And I've had friends in Israel tell me that they're seeing Arabs filming and videoing build apartment buildings in Jerusalem, walking around. So there's a concern that there's a lot of Israeli Arabs that are totally in support of Israel and serving the army and that type of thing. So there's a concern, though, there's a front there that might also open up. So Israel's got big problems. I mean, this is economically devastating. A couple 100,000 people are displaced internally in Israel right now. The entire towns in the north have been evacuated, some as large as 25,000 people. And those people have to go somewhere, and they all have businesses and jobs, though. So the economic impact of this is easily calculated in terms of $100 billion for Israel. And that's a country of 9 million people. So it's a lot of money. It's a big concern. But there's all sorts of false narratives out there. And I'm just absolutely shocked at what I see from some people.
Well, we're seeing in part the residual effect of the education system in America from K through 12 and the universities, which are filled with Jew hate and anti-Semitism. But John, let's move on to our main topic today, AI, and amazing article you sent me from Mind Matters on futurist Ray Kurzweil, who preaches the gospel of artificial intelligence. And he thinks AI is humanity's destiny. And it says 2023 is the year of artificial intelligence, with AI chatbots emerging as indispensable tools for businesses, individuals, and organizations worldwide. There are some predictions that are made by the year 2029 and 2045. But let's break this down, John. Why? It's happening really fast. Why should we be concerned, or what should we keep an eye out for here? What's this all about?
Well, first of all, from a Bible prophecy standpoint, we know that there's some kind of technological system that's coming. This AI thing, I was sitting in a conference room in Jerusalem just about a year ago when I first heard of this thing called ChatGPT. It was brought up at the Christian Media Summit that the Israeli government invited some of us to last year. And the speaker talked about this great thing, ChatGPT, and I frankly had not even heard of it. It had only been rolled out a week before. Already had 1 million subscribers. Now it's in the hundreds of millions, fastest growing app ever. But understand that ChatGPT, in terms of AI, is baby steps. So this guy named Ray Kurzweil, he's employed by Google, long employed by Google. He has talked about the singularity, meaning the point where man and machine merge. And we've seen other guys talking about this. Yuval Harari has spoken about this at the World Economic Forum, and talking about the fact that this AI will become like a god. And I refer many times to a talk that Yuval Harari gave at Google headquarters in 2025. In 2015. So 8 years ago, he went there and he said, I love coming to Silicon Valley because it is here in Silicon Valley that the religions that will control humanity in the 21st century are being created. Now, that speech has kind of flown a little bit under the radar, but I play it a lot just to kind of remind people that this is really a religion. And Kurzweil is very much interested in this, and he's interested in becoming immortal. I think that Kurzweil personally was very affected by something like the death of his father. And so he doesn't want that to happen to him. You know, when somebody dies, you get together for 20 minutes or 30 minutes and say nice things about them, and then it's kind of over in many respects. And Kurzweil does not want that. So there was a very famous Time cover that was based on an article about Kurzweil back in 2011 or 2012. And it was titled 2045, The Year Man Becomes Immortal, which is kind of an interesting cover story for a major news magazine that's secular. But now we move forward. And so they talk about 2045. Then they were talking about 2045 would be when the singularity occurred. The ultimate thing, they're still looking at 2045, but Kurzweil has come out later, such as this article that we see here, that they're going to achieve the singularity technology by 2029 and roll a lot of it out by 2030.
What is the Turing test developed by a man named Alan Turing? Alan Turing. What does this have to do with what this guy's talking about here?
Well, the Turing test would be when computers have achieved human-like quality. So in the artificial intelligence realm, and this thing has gone way beyond ChatGPT now, but there are people that I've talked to that have been using some AI things. Excuse me, I personally have kind of tried to resist it. And they say that what they're seeing is you get into a conversation with the computer, and the computer is very deceptive and seductive the way that it talks to you. It praises you. So this is being built into it, and this is leading people down a very, very dark path that has a lot of very serious implications.
So you mentioned 2045, and I'm quoting from the article here. It says AI won't stop at general human capability. We will see singularity, where AI becomes so powerful that it acquires superhuman intelligence and is capable of growing and expanding on its own. John, this is stuff out of the sci-fi novels and movies that, AI becomes self-aware, and all of a sudden it becomes a new power, more powerful, and apparently smarter than human beings. So that's 2045. It seems like a long ways off, and it seems unrealistic that man can live forever in a machine body, a flesh, like a transhumanist state. So it just seems like what they're talking about, they might be sure wanting to try this, but it just doesn't seem like it's feasible to the average person. They're going, no, humans and machines,
I think they're much further along than we even know. I mean, I look at things that are happening even here locally. I mention this all the time. These giant server farms are being built 20 minutes from my house by Meta, Facebook, by Google, by Amazon. And we're talking huge, long, like buildings a quarter mile long. And they're 6 stories high, and they're just full of computer racks that store our bits and bytes of data. So Google has about 29 of these type of centers around the world, 28 or 29. but the development is so fast. For example, in the area, and I just was reading some things as we're getting ready for this this talk today, the development in biological systems and using AI in biological systems to do things like gene editing and gene coding and altering DNA. And this is CRISPR technology, but now it's being able to be done at an industrial scale very quickly. The best example would be the three-dimensional mapping of proteins. That used to take, on average, one PhD scientist would work for 5 years full time to do a three-dimensional mapping of a biological protein, of which there are about 200 million, without which life would not exist. And they figure if they can get the three-dimensional structure of it down, then they can alter these very quickly, and they would use that AI. So once they figured out how to do it, they were able to map all 200 biological proteins literally in a matter of days. So if you take 200 million proteins and 5 years of PhD time, that's 1 billion years of PhD time that they were able to reduce down to a number of days. And this thing is growing very, very rapidly. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal that I sent you, and this is not even what we call a quantum computer, but it's just a supercomputer. The supercomputer they have, this is done at the Argonne National Laboratory near Chicago. Mm-hmm. They have a supercomputer there. It fits the size of 2 tennis courts, but it's able to do 1 quadrillion calculations in a second. That's 1 billion. One with 18 zeros after it. It can do in 1 second, and they think that they're going to very quickly get to where we'll be able to do 2 quadrillion. But that's just at the supercomputer level. They're developing quantum computers, and they're making pretty good progress on that. We don't know when that will roll out, but those computers will be able to do many thousands or millions of times the calculations of these supercomputers.
Wow.
That will essentially render anything that's encrypted will be able to be broken, because the computers can go through all the different calculations so quickly and find the key to unlock encryption. So this is a big concern. And the question is, where is it in the hands? Now, the Biden administration, as I call it, came out with some proposed regulations recently on regulating AI, but I'm not so sure that having that administration regulating something like this is good. But the question though is, David, who's controlling all the other countries? Is anybody doing anything about them? We were talking before we started about Xi's visit to San Francisco.
Yeah. San Francisco turned red pretty quick.
The streets lined with Chinese flags as they welcome the dictator.
And they cleaned up the streets.
They cleaned up the town. Okay, I was there a few years ago. It was a mess, and they cleaned up, which kind of shows, well, they could have cleaned it up all along anyway if they just put a little effort into it. So what are we paying people for there? Jeez. But then the other troubling thing was that 400 business leaders stood and gave this dictator, this absolute dictator that controls everything in China, a standing ovation. But then if you criticize them, oh, you're just, you're a bigot or something like that. This is really important stuff. And so at the same time that he's doing that, there's this concern that we have in the United States, well, with a couple things, fentanyl, a lot of which is manufactured through Chinese controlled projects and cartels. And, David, last year we had 100,000 people die of fentanyl overdoses in the United States. I remember I grew up in the Vietnam War era. I was very close to getting drafted when they stopped the draft in 1972 or 73. But, I know a lot of people who went to Vietnam and never came back. I think we lost 55,000 soldiers in Vietnam in a decade. We're losing twice that each year in the United States from fentanyl, and you don't hear a lot about it.
No.
But the other thing that the Chinese have developed is, look, the Chinese know how to control us. And they've developed this social media platform called TikTok. I refuse to, I've not downloaded it. If you have it, if your kids have it, you need to get rid of it. You need to get it off of their phones, their iPads, their computers, whatever, because it's best described as digital fentanyl. So somehow, in conjunction with this visit of Xi to the United States, TikTok, their algorithms caused the letter of Osama bin Laden that was written back in, I don't know, it kind of came to surface after 9/11 attacks in 2001. And now it's being taken off a lot of platforms today. That's because the algorithms are changing. But there's all these TikTok videos, all these people putting up things like, I didn't understand how smart Osama bin Laden was. I didn't understand. I've started reading the Quran. I didn't understand how feminist the Quran is, how protective of women that the Quran is. I mean, I've seen these videos today.
What?
And this is all, yeah, I know. It's
wow.
And it's all young people.
Yeah.
And it just, and so the West, we're the white oppressors. So everything we do that's good is we're oppressors, and everything bad that happens to somebody else is because we've oppressed them. And there's never any exceptions to this. And this is how they're being trained. But I'm just saying is, here we have all these people kowtowing to Xi of China, who's had his people. Remember, it was about 2019. There used to be a very famous guy named Jack Ma in China, very wealthy, multi-billionaire. And Xi decided he was becoming too powerful and it wasn't serving the purpose of the Chinese Communist Party. So Jack Ma has been not completely disappeared, but he's been very minimalized by Xi, because Xi wants to he controls everything. Now that's problematic for China. But so today, as he's in the US for these meetings, TikTok causes this Osama bin Laden letter to go viral on its platform. So everybody's reading it. And what does it say? It says essentially, the Jews are the problems. The Jews cause all the problems in the world. Everything is caused by the Jews. All the wars are caused by the Jews. Pornography, Hollywood, all that stuff. And look, there are a lot of Jewish people involved in these things. I don't doubt that, but that's not what the narrative is becoming. So what we started with the war between Israel and Hamas that's going on right now, we sort of circle back to, we talk about AI, and all of a sudden we end up back with this narrative about the Jews. And so everything's this giant circle where everything is connected now that we see. So what Kurzweil's doing in the development of these technological platforms is very scary. They're very powerful. We know that there is coming this thing in the latter days called the Mark of the Beast. That seems to have some kind of technology associated with it. We don't know exactly what that is, but it will be used to control and enforce the rule of the Antichrist and his sidekick, the false prophet. But understand that when that happens after a thing in the latter part of human history, what I call the 70th week of Daniel. There's a thing that Jesus referenced in Matthew chapter 24, the abomination of desolation. And it's after the abomination of desolation that this mark of the beast is rolled out. But it's not going to happen in the way that the Antichrist and false prophet, after the abomination of desolation, they'll sit down and they say, well, maybe we can crowdfund, $200 billion to invest in some kind of technological platform to control humanity. That's not the way that this is going to happen. This is going to happen. They're just going to flip the switch. So all of the infrastructure and things that need to be in place are going to be in place. I described the server farm once. I was with a friend, good Bible prophecy guy, and I was describing to Ben, that's his name, I was describing to Ben what I was seeing as I was driving by these server farms in New Albany, Ohio, and what they did, and describing what they did. And he said, that's the mind of the beast. And I think that one of the things we need to understand is, how does technology fit into this final beast empire? And I think it's going to play a very significant role. We see X controlling a lot of things. They want to develop a payment system. Everybody wants to develop a payment system. And when Netanyahu came to the U.S. before the UN meetings back in September, just a couple months ago, he had a meeting with Elon Musk, Max Tegmark, who was one of the big AI pioneers, Elon Musk, and a guy named Brockman from AI. And Brockman from OpenAI, which is a company that Elon Musk helped found, but left because he thought it was being, quote, too commercial. He said that, Brockman said that, Kurzweil's the guy who understands where all of this is going. And Elon Musk, who'd never really said before what he thought, he said, yeah, I agree. Kurzweil's the guy. So this is all developing. And then Elon Musk and his company called X.AI. You could look it up on the internet, X.AI. And you'll see that they're sort of bringing this out as based on the Hitchhiker's Guide, a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, and what this AI that they envision will do. And OpenAI has now said, we have another one coming out. It's going to be more powerful than anything you've seen before. It's going to wow you. X.AI is going to do that. And nobody's going to control this. This is the thing. The genie is out of the bottle, and it's just a question of when it reaches these Turing tests that they talked about in that article.
Yeah, I encourage people to check out the article. They're talking about our salvation being digital, and it says exactly what kind of God would AI be, and it talks about the spiritual dimension, creating our own God, creating a God in the image of man. John, we got to wrap it up, but brother, it goes by so fast. Thank you for all you do and all your research. And friends, you're welcome. Visit John's YouTube channel at FBC Chapel, and we'll see you next time. I want to mention the Worldview Matters mug. There's one side, and the other side keeps speaking the truth about things that matter. You can get that for any donation. We've got a fundraiser between now and Christmas. You can help by helping out with production costs of Worldview Matters, a one-time gift of $200 or more, or a monthly $25 gift, and that will help us continue the show and hopefully grow and expand. Boy, it goes by so fast. I appreciate the guests, and I appreciate you sharing the podcast. God bless you, and as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter.